Hey there, everyone. Greetings. It's GleeCon. Thanks for tuning in. We have before us another episode of my show, Lore of Warcraft, the massive monumental task. We're trying to cover every single thing ever created in the World of Warcraft universe. One of those things is kind of a children's book called Folk and Fairy Tales of Azeroth. We're reading this kind of as an aside. Our main journey is, and what we did on the last episode of the show was our massive World of Warcraft classic walkthrough, where we're trying to do every quest in the game, and we are doing a horde run of Thousand Needles. That's, I think, yeah, that's what we did last time. And once a week, I'm dropping one of these just to help buy me a little breathing room as I try to flesh out and plan for that, but also because we need to get to it all eventually. Now, this is stuff we passed up before because it's non-canon, but I've come back to it now. And I thought I only had two total more of these. The Embrace that we did, and one which was our last one of these last week, and one other in the prehistoric non-canon lore or small. It's not just non-canon; it's also like online only content, stuff like that. But I missed this one. Somehow I overlooked this one. So we have this one, and the next week we'll have one more Fable before we take a small break from Fables again for a while. But this will be our fourth one. There's only 12 total. So after next week, we'll be almost halfway done with the whole book. So that just gives you a kind of general gist of how the book is, where 5 of the 12 tales are completely like fables. Yeah, like Aesop's fable style, almost like origin stories of the universe. All right, no more talking for me. Stay a while and listen to Eyes of the Earth Mother by L.L. McKinney, illustrated by Corey Godby, who I think illustrated our last one by Christy Golden. So my guess is this one here with the eyes is our first one. Like I said, we're now on our 5th, right? Or we're on our 4th. So we also read The Bone, which was the Volpira story. We read the Kobold story with the pickaxe. And on the very last story, we read the one about the 2 moons. So now we've done 4. It is said that in the time, in the age before memory, before Azeroth had the brightness of day and the darkness of night to mark her steps, the Earth Mother spent her waking hours roaming the vast emptiness of the world. Alone she braved the shadows and the whispers that rose from the depths. She heard the Old Ones speak their deceptions, but she could not be swayed. Still, she had cause to worry, for she was with child, and knew she could not labor with nothing to safeguard her newborn children from the creeping deep. She journeyed on, searching for a place where she could safely give birth to the light of her heart, away from the corruption. Finding no such sanctuary, she decided that she would craft a haven herself, and so she set about the task of shaping the world. She cupped her hands to form the land, she bent her back to raise the mountains, and pricked her fingers upon their peaks. Where her nails grazed the stone, sparks rose hot and wild. Her fingers cut grooves into the earth, and from them flowed the first waters. Soon great seas and oceans stretched before her, rushing to chase the newly formed rocks and fires at the shore. Water, earth, and flame beat against one another, none of them yielding. The Earth Mother laughed at the antics of her creation, and from her breath were loosed the winds. They cut across the land, whipping up the newly laid dust. Gently, the Earth Mother bid them, but the winds were over-eager and restless, and so she knelt to show them how to lighten their touch. Like this, she sighed upon the shining fog that now rested along the ground, and sent it spiraling into the heavens. The mists rose until they could go no higher, curling white and wispy at first, and soon thick and gray. When the clouds could hold no more, the skies opened up and the first rains fell, heavy. The earth eagerly drank this bounty, and in return offered up the grass, the brush, the trees and forests, the swamps and jungles. The winds, having learned their lesson well, played softly through the vines and branches over the flowering glades, dancing in the light. The Earth Mother gazed over these new works in wonder and called the elements by name. She gave names to the newborn rivers. She played games with the winds as they raced across the open plains. She lay against the still young mountains to speak at length with the stone. And oh, how she loved to stretch her arms toward the heavens and feel the stars kiss her fingertips. All the wilds were her creation, her place of peace, her sanctuary. You will make fine companions for my children, she said to the elements. The Earth Mother grew to love the elements, and they loved her. So much so that when she asked for warmth, the mountains poured out their molten hearts for her. When she was parched, the skies opened up and water dappled the ground. When she wished to hear music, the rivers whispered and the flames roared. Everything was new and radiant, brimming with her essence enough to keep the darkness of the deep at bay. Now, she decided, I can bring forth my children. And so the Earth Mother knelt upon the golden plains. The ground cradled her body, the rivers cooled her brow, the mountains provided shelter, and fire beat back the dark. There she labored, provided for, cared for, until finally from her womb came the first light of day, radiant and glorious. Then came the second, gentle and luminous. Anshe, she whispered to the first child, my son, may you bring life, burning, and light bright. And Musha, she said to the second, my daughter, may you bring rest, tranquil, and healing. Swift and eager the winds carried news of the newborn children across the land and sea, and the elements rejoiced as they gathered near to bask in the light of the twins. Anshe and Musha, they had been named. Sun and moon, the elements called them. Over time, the twins grew close with their mother's many creations. Anshe could wield fire's light and warmth as his own, and Musha danced with the waters of the tides. Anshe made steadfast friends with the mountains, and Musha shared secrets with the winds. The twins grew steadily in their power, soon able to influence the elements themselves. So strong was their bond that the twins were able to use the might of the elements to forge weapons so that they might spar and play. Dual blades for Anshe and a bow with arrows for Musha. This brought the Earth Mother joy immeasurable. With soft words and tender touches, she walked her children through the ages, hand in hand, showing them the secrets of this infant land, marveling at their play with each other and with the elements themselves. This she saw was good. I want to pause here because that just goes to show this is kind of like the Sun Elves and the Night Elves, which they follow Elune, and the bow is their weapon, and the Sun Elves, which become the Blood Elves, they are more inclined to use those sort of glives or the dual-edged spears. And yet the Earth Mother was ever watchful, ever vigilant. Her dear children were still young, still vulnerable to the corruption that lurked in the depths. The elements kept the shadows at bay as best they could, but still the Earth Mother worried. She stood guard over the twins, always, never sleeping, never looking away, always keeping them close, even with their elemental guardians so near. Eventually, the work of creation and of giving birth, and then of her ceaseless watch, began to tire the Earth Mother. She grew weary and knew that she would soon need to rest. But fear ate at her still. How could she sleep and protect her children? How could she keep them close, keep them safe from the darkness? Remembering how the mountain had sheltered her while she labored, the Earth Mother took up her twins, the sun and the moon, and pressed them into her eyes. As she did this, first with Anshe, the light of day faded, and the world finally knew night. The peace and calm that fell over the land soothed the Earth Mother's spirit. Sun and moon, night and day, now will I always see thee, my children. Finally she took in Musha, the light of her love, finally returning to her fully. This would keep her children safe and hidden. Kind of a bad picture of that, because the cropping without me manually doing it is bad, but this is, I don't know what this is. I guess it's the Earth Mother, but it's holding like a little tauren cupped in her hands, and maybe that's supposed to be Anshe personified as a tauren, because this would be a tauren's tail. Watch over this earth, over this world, the Earth Mother said to the elements as she prepared to slumber. Guard it against the shadows until I wake again. And so the Earth Mother slept while she nurtured sun and moon as she had when she carried them. Resting first with one eye shut and then the other, she kept one always open, for so great was her children's power, their light, that it could no longer be fully contained. This restless watch, where she was never fully asleep, denied the world the warmth that Anshe had learned to wield. This cold crept across the land. It capped the mountains in ice and froze the rivers. When the rains came, they fell in the first snows of winter. Musha's powers were similarly diminished by her mother's rest. Without the moon to guide the winds through their dance, they whipped up in storms and blizzards. An ice age. That's what we have here. A common, again, this is a sort of common, like old indigenous type of people's myth story. It's very much in that vein, and they very frequently contain myths explaining ice age periods. When the Earth Mother had rested enough, she opened her eyes onto this altered world. She saw how the elements had changed in the absence of her children, and she very nearly wept at the sight. But then as the light of the sun and moon returned with her gaze, the cold storms abated, and all returned to what it once was. The elements consoled her, speaking of the new life that had arisen as a result of her time of rest. They showed her the thriving plants and animals among the melting snow to convince her that this too was good. And so the Earth Mother named the seasons in her time of work and her time of rest. With a little side quote, this way, the beating of her heart dug deep into the earth, and the song of life it carried saturated the soil. From her eyes, she showed her children how to guide the elements through these new seasons, how to color the leaves before letting them fall, how to bolster the fields before letting seed take root. And soon as they had with the elements' raw power, Anshe and Musha could bring on the changes at will. Good, the Earth Mother said to her growing children. You have shown me your strength. You have proven your power. You can withstand the dark. The world is yours. I made it for you. Watch over it and care for all that call it home. But you must still stay safe inside my eyes. And so it was that when the Earth Mother would take her rest from behind her shut eyes, Anshe and Musha's ever-growing power would tend the changes of the world, calling the seasons to their rightful time. The twins nestled in their mother's head together, always near each other, their light shining across the land from beneath her eyelashes. And when their mother would wake, their radiance would greet her and the precious world below with joy. To see and feel her children grow and prosper greatly pleased the Earth Mother and filled her with such love. It brought her joy immeasurable, and she wished to share this happiness with her children. So when it came time for her to slumber next, she stretched over the land, the golden plains cradling her as she slept. This way the beating of her heart dug deep into the earth, and the song of life it carried saturated the soil. When next the Earth Mother awoke, she found new life huddled in the shadow of her bosom. Come, she called to these first children of the plains. See all that awaits you. Sensing this new life, Anshe and Musha shimmered and marveled. There are so many, Musha whispered. What will we call them? Anshe asked. The Earth Mother plucked wheat from the golden plains and sprinkled it over her new progeny. Shuhalo, she murmured. You are my love made flesh, and I brought you forth so my children would know you. Anshe, Musha, my sun and moon, teach them what I have taught you, so that they may care for the land and commune with the elements, that they may see my love in you and in all things. And so it was that the sun and moon taught the Shuhalo, who came to be known as the tauren, all that they knew, how to call on the elements, to take gifts from the bounty of the land, to make homes and food, to sing and dance and roam the fields, to ferry the rivers and hunt the beasts of the bush. The Shuhalo gave thanks to the elements, to Anshe and Musha, and especially to the Earth Mother, mother of all creation. And for a time it was good. But as the elements turned their attention more toward aiding the tauren, the old ones, trapped beneath the depths, watched and waited with a patience as ancient as the world itself. And while Sun and Moon were almost strong enough to defend themselves, the Shuhalo were very young and vulnerable. So it was that when next the Earth Mother slept, the Sun and Moon's power radiated from her slumbering eyes to bring about the change of the seasons. The old ones stretched their influence across the land. Slowly at first the shadows crept through the cracks and crevices of the world, then, growing bold, swept across the plains until their poisonous whispers pricked the hearts of the tauren. The old ones had their own lessons to teach. Both quiet and innumerable were their voices of hatred, of anger, of greed, of sorrow, and of war. A number of the Shuhalo were deceived by these whispers. These corrupted Shuhalo embraced the words of wickedness and turned on their brethren. They rained down destruction on the land and family they were meant to share. Then there were the ones who lost their light. The darkness invaded their minds and took from them their very selves until all that remained were broken thoughts and battered beings. Anshe and Musha watched helplessly as the Shuhalo were consumed by chaos. They did not know what to do, for their mother had only ever spoken of shadows, not the terrible suffering those powers would bring. Distraught, Sun and Moon cried out in anguish, waking the Earth Mother so she could see what had been wrought. Instead of water, blood soaked the earth. Fires had turned the forests to ash. The winds howled with vicious storms, and the ground itself shook with a fury that cracked open stone and left the land scarred. All was in disarray, for the Shuhalo had turned the elements loose against one another, and for the first time tauren slew tauren. "What is this?" the Earth Mother gasped in horror. "What has happened?" "Something dark," Anshe wailed. "From the deep," Musha lamented. The Earth Mother, saddened by what had come to pass, wept but a single tear. The world she had taken such care into carving, molding the land to rise as hills and fall as valleys, teaching the elements to tend the forests, leading the Shuhalo to seed the plains, was now tainted. The darkness had come, and she was unable to prevent the hold it had taken. The shadow was rooted in the earth, and anything that touched it could eventually fall. This meant the Earth Mother realized that she herself was no longer a safe haven for her children. She was forever connected to these lands, and so she could never leave them. In time, perhaps she too would succumb and be the reason Anshe and Musha might as well. Devastated and unwilling to take such a risk, she wiped away the lone tear she had before wrenching her eyes free, her fingers digging so deeply that the light of sun and moon would never be able to return to her again. "Forgive me, my children," she cried. "It is the only way." Flung free from her skull, Anshe and Musha tried to console their mother, but it was no use. She lay against the land, frozen in sorrow, now unable to see her children or her world. She did not move. She barely breathed. "We must stop what did this," Anshe said to his sister. "We must make it right." Musha agreed, and together they set off across the land, determined to hunt down what had corrupted the hearts of the tauren and caused their mother's despair. As they traveled, word of the Earth Mother's sorrow and the twins' journey to save her from it was carried on the winds, and soon they were met by a party of tauren. "Be mindful," Musha cautioned her brother as the Shuhalo advanced. "We do not know if they have fallen prey to the madness." But as the tauren drew near, it was clear that though they had been touched by the darkness, they had not been taken by it. "We can trust them," Musha sighed in relief as she lowered her brow. A tauren woman at the head of the caravan called out to the twins in greeting. "Radiant Anshe, luminous Musha, we have heard the despair of the Earth Mother, and it has made our hearts heavy. We come to offer what aid we can." Anshe looked to his sister in surprise. "After what has happened, our mother would not want them to risk so much, and it is our duty to protect them." The tauren who had spoken for her people called out once more. "Please hear us. Like you, we are her children. We live on her lands. We hear her whispers on the winds. We call her elements. We feel her light, her love in you, and we defend our family." The tauren turned as a wagon was drawn forth. Musha and Anshe leaned in to see what the tauren had brought before them, then leaned back in shock. Laid against a bed of long grass rested a baby. The child glowed blue with life and light, kin to the spark that burned in both sun and moon. "We found the baby alone in the fields," the tauren explained. "We approached a watering hole to rest, but before we could drink, the water receded to cradle this little one here." At that, the baby opened their eyes and began to wail. The sound bore into the twins and pricked them in the same way as their mother's sorrow. That is when they recognized the child for who they were. The single tear their mother cried had fallen to the earth, and from it had sprung another life. Musha took up the child in her arms, and the baby quieted. "They are our mother's light," she said to her brother. "They are our family." "What shall we call them?" he asked, poking at the newborn curiously. "Mother will know," Musha explained. "Let us take them back to her." "What of the shadows?" As the last word was uttered, a stillness fell over the plain, a silence most unnatural. Anshe readied his blades, Musha drew her bow. Together they waited and listened, guarding the tauren and the babe. And then the shadows struck. The darkness was like a beast, reaching with its slithering grasp, seeking to tear and sunder. Anshe stood strong as the mountain and fought with the ferocity of fire. Musha evaded quick as the wind, flowing in and out of the shadows reached like water. The tauren called forth the elements to aid in the battle. Where the light of sun's blade burned, the shadows retreated. Where moon's glimmering arrows struck, the whispers evaporated. Together sun and moon began to beat back the darkness that threatened to choke the land, the summoned elements chasing it back toward the recesses of the world. "We are winning!" Anshe cried, raising his swords to the sky. He did not see the reaching shadow until it was too late. It lashed out, aiming for his heart. "Brother!" Musha loosed an arrow. It found its mark, cleaving the darkness in twain, but not before Anshe was struck. He fell, grasping at his side, his blood welling between his fingers. Musha threw herself down beside him and sought to bind his wound with water and wind, but no matter what she did, he continued to bleed. This is the quote. Like you, we are her children. We live on her lands. We hear her whispers on the winds. We call her elements. We feel her light, her love in you. The wound is too great, she said. I cannot heal it. Maybe our mother can. Do not leave me, sister, Anshe begged. I will not. She stayed at his side and instead sent her plea on the wind. When the Earth Mother heard of her children's peril, she shook herself loose of her grief. Great was her sorrow, but her love for Anshe and Musha was deeper still. She could not see the way, but the waters called her name, and she followed. The winds pulled at her hands, guided her swiftly to find her sun and moon. Anshe, she called. Musha! Mother! Moon reached for the Earth Mother's hands, pulling her to her side. Anshe is hurt. When the Earth Mother knelt beside the twins, her fingers found her son's face and were wetted by his blood. I cannot close the wound, Musha cried. But you are keeping him alive. The Earth Mother hugged her children, relieved to have found them, and surprised to find they were not alone. Musha presented the babe to her mother. The Shuhalo found them lying on the plain, crying out as you did, birthed from your tear. The Earth Mother held the little one in her arms and was pricked by the light of joy once more. Lo Sho, do not despair. As she rocked the baby, she asked her children what had become of the darkness. We drove it back for now, Anshe answered. But the Shuhalo are still not safe, Musha said. It will return any moment. What are we to do? Anshe is wounded and I cannot fight. For if she and her healing light strayed too far from her mother, he would surely die. The Earth Mother turned toward her sun and moon. Though she could no longer see, she remembered clearly the vastness of her creation, the wonder and life and the destruction in the wake of the shadows that had come to devour it. You are right, the Earth Mother finally said, her voice heavy with sadness, for she knew what must be done. The Shuhalo, my Shuhalo, are free but tainted. They will draw the shadows to them unless I do something to contain them. Mother, no, the twins protested, but she quieted their storm, as she had with the elements so long ago. I must, and you must take to the heavens forever this time. From there you will see all. From there your light will chase away whatever traces of shadow I cannot hold. Anshe, do not stray from your sister. Stay in her sight always so she may tend your wounds. Musha, follow him closely. You will be his secret strength. Here. The Earth Mother touched her nose to the child in her arms, then pressed Losho into Musha's hold. Take them with you. They are young yet and untouched by the darkness. Teach them, my children. Teach them my ways. Teach them to care for and protect the Shuhalo and this world as I have taught you. And let them know that they have my love. You all do. The Earth Mother hugged her children close to her one last time. She kissed their faces as she had when they were younger. Take care of each other and have courage, she said when they began to weep, for I am with you as I am with all my children, always. And so Sun and Moon returned to the heavens, taking with them the new babe. Her heart heavy but her conviction firm, the Earth Mother called the elements to her for the final time. She summoned the rage of the fires, the rush of the winds, the strength of the stones, the push of the waters. They came to her, and with their aid she stretched herself across the world. She bowed to embrace the lands one last time. She threw her arms wide to lay paths for the Shuhalo to follow. She bent her ear to hear the winds as they carried the prayers of her children. And with her chest pressed to the earth, she let the beating of her heart dig deep once more. Here she rooted herself. Here she would make her stand. Here she would hold the shadows fast. Here she gave all of herself for her creations, never to rise and walk the land again, all to make the world safe for them. Seeing their mother's sacrifice, heartbroken Musha bade the breezes lift their mother's words so the Shuhalo could hear. She pulled up the tides and the whispering winds so they would always be able to find her voice and follow it. Anshe, with his fierce light, shone across the lands so the way would be clear. Together they took their eternal post as young Losho watches and listens to the lessons of their siblings, hearing in them the wisdom of their mother. Where there is darkness, you are my light. When the shadows rise, you stem the tide. Be neither troubled nor tired, nor ever afraid, for in each other you shall always find me. You are stronger together, but you are never alone. Beneath the now ever-present glow of her sun and moon, the Earth Mother's essence cradles the world close, listening to all that happens. With her body she beat back the darkness. By her love the world was made safe. While the light may be gone from her eyes, the warmth of her heart is undying. And though the Shuhalo are no longer what they once were, she will never forsake him. For they are her children, and her love and wisdom will always be there to guide them. Okay, so there's actually, for this being like a very, again, like all of them so far, very kind of kid-like story, kind of juvenile in its writing and not complex on the surface at all. There's actually a ton to unpack. All right, so I'm just going to address whatever thoughts. I had a lot of thoughts going throughout, but I didn't want to keep stopping. I wanted to kind of get to the end so that those that just wanted to hear me read, sayonara, and then here I'm going to give a couple minutes of what I was thinking. So one, this one we should have read before the Embrace, just for the simple fact that this really talks about the origin of the sun and moon, and in the Embrace, the two moons already exist. So, and the sun is already talked about. So in this one, the sun and the moon are twins. Now, what is that third? The baby, the blue baby. My guess is it's that second moon, because remember there are two moons. So that is the only thing. In my mind, I was originally thinking, well, maybe this is showing the origin of another race, because in this story, the tauren are essentially the main race. But now that I think about it more, I bet you it's the second moon. So also, there is some differences, which is why I would say that these stories are definitely considered non-canon, because they're ultimately just oral traditions that seek to moralize while also explaining some things that are unexplainable to sort of primitive peoples. And in this case, for instance, the sun and moon are considered twins, but it's not that they are expressly stated to not be twins in the Embrace, but it's certainly not indicated or implied in any way that they are twins and equals and have the same kind of loving relationship as is shown here. Also, you have the main moon and the other moon as a mother and daughter, whereas this one, they are siblings. So again, major changes here. So we have to just take all of that as it's like celestial myths, much like we have in humanity, and just like they talked about some ice ages. And this one also has the same Native American kind of tones, although not hit stylistically as well, because regardless of how people feel, and I'm not knocking this writer or any of the others, they're all professional writers, and again, I'm not. It's easy to be a critic. But Christie Golden is a far stronger writer, in my opinion, than what we just read, and is probably, until I read otherwise, she's the strongest writer in the stable that Blizzard has. Okay, so what else? There's I mentioned the thing about the Night Elves. I figured I was going to forget that one, so I had to talk about it. Another curious thing here at the end is you have, well, one, chronologically, the actual book chronicles, which is to be taken as the true historical timeline of events, also goes into contrast for some of what we just read. So this is why we, again, have to take this with a grain of salt. What is the Earth Mother, first of all? What is it symbolic of? Is it symbolic of Azeroth, the world spirit? Is it, and if that's the case, why, when the Earth Mother arrived in Azeroth, was the old gods already there? Because they're explaining it as though the Earth Mother was a celestial being from far away, and as she came to Earth, she brought the sun and moon with her. Now that makes me think more of a Big Bang theory or a meteor type theory, something like that. And that means there's something existing within. And also, this is the spark that then makes the elements come. Now that could be very well true. So whatever this exterior spirit-like thing, if it is to be taken as truth and not a personification of the spirit that is the world spirit Azeroth, then that introduces a whole new thing we've never touched upon, and is kind of a fun idea. But what makes it weird is that the old gods were already there. And whereas we know that the old gods sought out, they're part of a group of people that are sort of the anti-creators, that seek to go and corrupt these worlds, and they're only drawn to worlds that have these world spirits in them. So that makes me think that the Earth Mother is not the world spirit Azeroth, since she's arriving after the old gods already exist. So there's all that to kind of really, we'd have to set them side by side and red string it all to figure out exactly if we can make these things all sync up naturally. The final thing I would say is they don't really talk about any of the other races, but they do talk about the tauren now being diminished. We know all of the original races were once races of the Titans, and it was the curse of flesh caused by the old gods that brought them down. And this is what I think too is eluding, which is smart, because all the races would have had to have experienced that. So this is essentially their origin story, and within it, it's also explaining how they were affected, how the tauren were affected by the curse of flesh. I think that's what we're getting at there. But hey, if you think I'm an idiot, keep it to yourself. No, I'm just kidding. If you disagree with me and you think anything, you have a better insight, feel free to comment. Put it in the comments. But that's kind of what my takeaway was for it. My other big takeaway is that you guys are awesome. Thanks, everybody, for always coming on, doing what you do, listening, liking, subscribing, helping me live the dream life, which is to be a chronicler of the World of Warcraft universe. Wow, wouldn't that be awesome if that was all my energies could go into that. But hey, every day we are incrementally inching closer and closer to making that a potential reality. So thank you guys. Another episode in the pipe 5x5, and I'll see you all next time on Lore of Warcraft. Whoops.